temple, but yet there were a few tourists who were coming just to visit the temple. The experience will be unsatisfactory largely because of the poor state of upkeep of the temple. But why? Because we don't give these type of things sufficient prominence in our economy, and that has to change. I'm very expectant, and I'm optimistic that the initial investment this year advocated in the budget for the creative industry is a step in the right direction. I can be optimistic. There are many times in the past where I have actually been disappointed by budgets, their pronouncements, and the lack of will to actually follow through on them. And I will say that having carefully reviewed the budget presented by the Minister of Finance, there are many good elements in it. But successive budgets by successive governments have been good and well-founded. Where we have fallen down is in execution. And we need to hold the government accountable that if they're actually doing all of this with regards to the creative industries, and I'm talking about that sector in particular, at the end of the year, let's look back and see what you have achieved with it. Has government really fulfilled their obligations, what they indicated that we were going to do? Has it borne fruit? What are the next steps arising out of this? And from budget to budget, we see things that have been pronounced, and then in subsequent budgets, a totally new direction is taken by the government of the day. And we got to actually move away from this scenario where a budget is really just a 12-month pronouncement, and thereafter we're going to actually come up with a new strategic theme. The one in this particular case is stimulating growth, generating prosperity, and that will actually engender a number of other activities, another pronouncements, another set of incentives, and we actually lose whatever momentum has been created before. There's a behavioral side to all of this, which we collectively have to actually get involved in, and the way to do that is to really ensure that our government performs. The budget cycle in Trinidad is actually a very interesting cycle. Literally from April, May of the year, ministries are in a semi-lockdown state, focusing on the budget, which is actually September, October, thereabouts. And for weeks thereafter, there's debates and so on. So a lot of time is consumed on creating this budget, but when we look at it, there's very little time that is actually taken up in analyzing the performance of the government with the previous budget. We listen, of course, to the Minister of Finance indicating what has happened in the previous year. And I actually heard our Minister of Sport indicating that 95% of the public sector investment projects were actually expended in the year 2011-2012. I have yet to believe that, because there were a number of initiatives that were in the last budget, two in particular, electronic payment system, which is an absolute necessity for creating an e-commerce environment in Trinidad, which is an absolute necessity for any modern society to stimulate the economy. And there's also the issue of the extension of our broadband capabilities into the remote areas in Trinidad. The two go hand in hand. But has that been achieved? And the answer is no. It was in the budget. It was stated that it was going to be achieved during the year 2011-2012. It has not been achieved, but yet there are these statements that 95% of the PSIP has been expended. Ladies and gentlemen, students, because you all have a role to play in this, and I'll talk some more about that role, we got to focus away from just debating about what is in the budget for the coming year and focus more effort in really the performance of the budget for the previous year. If we don't do that, what you're going to have is an exercise continuing going forward where the budget is pronounced, yes, and we have all these debates and various other things and so on, and it's the same old, same old. As a country, we cannot do that. $9.1 billion in education, what you are doing is creating a sector of the population who, in a few years' time, going to be moving out and looking for employment. If we don't create employment opportunities for these students, what is going to happen in the country? Two things can happen. We're going to actually gradually lose the better students to foreign countries, And that has been the case in a number of sectors in Trinidad. Or we'll find that there's undesirable behaviors creeping in, largely because these children who have actually just graduated from secondary, tertiary educational institutions are not gainfully occupied. I will repeat again, the creative industries is a step in the right direction to create the new types of employment that is necessary to mop up these graduating students. The issue is we got to work within the school environment and ensure that the schools themselves value the creative industry sector in Trinidad. Creative industry sector includes the film industry, includes the fashion industry, includes the whole carnival industry and so on. We need to understand what we as students, in particular in the tertiary education institution, need to actually learn to be able to capitalize on these industries. And it's not really just design and so on, it's really the business side of the whole creative sector. How do we actually harness the talent that is available in the country and really create a business out of it? We have carnival, and carnival is a huge potential in this country and so on. That is a wasted potential. Imagine a carnival theme park that is actually along the lines of one of the theme parks within Disney World in Trinidad. And there has been pronouncements, there have been statements by the National Carnival Development Foundation to create a carnival complex that will actually allow people to participate in a carnival experience throughout the year. And imagine the potential for that. It then creates a situation where cruise ships will visit this country because they know that when they visit, their cruise ship passengers can actually go to this complex and see a show on carnival, experience our steel band, calypsos, and at the end of that show, they can themselves participate in the joys of jumping up to steel band music or whatever. But it's something that is scheduled, it's something that is planned, it's something that is well organized, it's something that is a business has been created out of. And the cruise ship complex, because it's a well-scheduled instance in our calendar, it's going to happen every 2 weeks, it's going to happen once a week and so on. The cruise ships will actually stop at Trinidad and we will actually benefit from that. It is only a matter of time, if we don't capitalize on it, that other countries will capitalize on it. And earlier this year, I presented to the business sector in Guadeloupe and mentioned to them this initiative in Trinidad. And they all sat up and thought it was a wonderful idea. Guadeloupe has their own carnival, and they saw this as an opportunity for themselves to really get more tourists to come to their country. We don't view our creative industries enough like that as an opportunity to create more tourist potential to impact positively in the tourist industry. We got to actually look at this as a business. And to the students here, that is probably my message to you. How do we actually look at these creative industries, the fashion industry, the film industry, the animation industry, the carnival industry as a business? And what do we need to do to create products out of it that is marketable, but marketable not as a one-off thing this year and then we forget it thereafter, but it's marketable in a repeatable way so that we can actually capitalize on it and generate income from it. As I said, this step, what is being advocated in the budget for the creative sector is a very small step in the right direction, but at the end of the day, what is really going to determine whether that is a catalyst for other things to happen in future years is if we look at the performance of the government at the end of this year and say, have you done enough in this area? Has it actually borne fruit? What are the things that actually worked well, what did not work well, and how can we improve going forward? It's a very simple thing to do, and sometimes our governments, all our successive governments, seems to complicate simple things in our country. You all as students can actually do some of the work in an analytical way within your environments and analyze what has happened in the past and look to see how it informs what happens in the future. In the creative industries, I would suggest there's a tremendous amount of potential in that area. In fact, I've written it down while somebody else is talking, that in harsh economic times, the hospitality and entertainment industry is one of the few industries that thrive and do well. And that is certainly the case where the creative industries can impact upon. We as students got to not just be participants in that industry, we got to figure out how we can actually convert this industry into really revenue generating and really help it to actually grow economy. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much and I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jaggarnath. He has raised two very, very important issues. The whole question of the creative industry. It's now something that is becoming fashionable, and I think it deserves to be treated and examined as we move forward. The other question that he raises has to do with the budget. What is the budget? There's a lot of mystique, mystery, mischief about budgets that I don't know whether we can get into a discussion of that, but we go through this ritual every year, and at the end of the period we usually conclude that we have not achieved half of what we set out to do, much less than half. But there are reasons for that, and that is not my subject today. My task is to invite Mrs. Vivian Rambarath Parasram to address you. She's an attorney with a Bachelor of Laws from the University of the West Indies, a Master of Laws from the International Marine Law Institute in Malta, and a legal education certificate from the Hugh Wooding Law School. She was awarded an International Maritime Organization fellowship in 1999, which led to her pursuing her LLM in International Marine Law. She has also been a consultant to the IMO and is currently a member of their list of experts. Mrs. Rambarath Parasram is currently an assistant professor of maritime law at UTT. Please welcome Mrs. Parasram.
Good morning, everyone. I'm just waiting for my presentation to be loaded. How many of us recognize what is going on that picture? Can anyone identify what are the skill sets required to undertake such an operation? Well, this is in fact a picture of the first transshipment operation being undertaken in Trinidad and Tobago. This operation started in July this year. The large vessel is in fact a Cape-sized vessel. How many of us can even identify what types of vessels are employed there? We have a feeder vessel that is coming in from Brazil to feed this vessel that is anchored into Trinidad that takes the ore, the iron ore, it's an iron ore transshipment to China. How many of us would like to be part of that activity? How many of us can even begin to understand the complexity involved in getting involved in such an activity? Well, this government has recognized that the maritime sector is one of the areas coded for development, one of the areas that can in fact employ our youths and drive our economy and diversify our economy away from the oil and gas sector. But what are the instruments in place to facilitate this? The maritime sector means many things to many persons. To the real players in the maritime field, it means that type of operation. It means that type of infrastructure. It means the building of vessels of that nature. It means the skill set to feed that infrastructure. It means a legislative framework to facilitate such operations. What do we have in place? Well, we have been trying to get our house in order, but with very limited success. So, with respect to the maritime sector, captains, chief engineers, when they think of the maritime sector, they think ports, they think harbors, they think container terminals. What do we think? A lot of us think that our maritime sector includes our fishery sector. Perhaps if we were to embrace a very broad definition, yes, maybe. But oversight of this area is better and usually is better executed through the Ministry of Agriculture. And yes, Fisheries Division does exist within the Ministry of Agriculture, but within the monitoring of and the registration of pirogues that tend to fall within the Ministry of Transport. So there's confusion within our role. To the oil and gas sector, they would consider that an oil and gas operation. We consider it a maritime operation. So our perspectives are different. And how do we reconcile all of these objectives to realize the potential and the full potential of the sector? Well, from my research into this field, from my students' research into this field, we have discovered that the maritime sector is frequently misunderstood by our policymakers, by students, by the average Joe public in general. As a result of this misconception, the visibility of opportunities in the sector is not there for the average person trying to seek a viable career. However, this government has been investing in this field for over a decade, but the success has in fact been very limited. Why? Why is the success limited? I'll take you through some of the areas that are currently attracting the interest of our government in this fiscal package. Ship repair. With respect to this sector, there are some skills that are available, but is the sector sufficiently manned to actually answer to the demands of international standards? Because shipping is in fact international. What we may accept locally, they will not. They will simply proceed to the nearer port because they can. The strategic location of Trinidad and Tobago is in fact an advantage. However, although we are strategically located, if we fail to deliver on the expectations of our merchant navy, when I speak of the merchant navy, I'm not talking about Coast Guard. I'm talking about the vessels, the tankers, the containers, the oil tankers, the vessels that carry our ammonia and methanol. They will simply proceed to the nearest port that can in fact give them a service that will ensure that they are not vulnerable to an inspection that will entail their vessel being delayed. Because shipping, time is everything. Turnaround of a vessel is important when it's in port. It means the less time you spend in a port, it's the more time you are there making money as a vessel. The less time you spend discharging your cargo, there's more money to be made. So there is significant room for improvement and efficiency within our maritime infrastructure. But where is the emphasis right now? We are speaking about the ship repair facility. And again, the successful development of this sector is very much dependent on the available skills, not at the tertiary level, but at the vocational level. And such skills usually have to be certified in order for you to be actually given a contract to work on a vessel of the size I began my slide with. So therefore, in the absence of certified vocational training, in the absence of certified welders, painters, blasting electricians, persons with that certification, vessels and ship owners will continue to access these services from another country. Therefore, this budget presents an opportunity for us to answer to this need by ensuring and building the infrastructure to certify these types of persons, these types of skill sets, because not only do they fuel the construction sector, but the certification will allow them to actually enter the maritime sector. Shipbuilding. This has been an area, again, carded for development. But what does shipbuilding mean? Someone refers to a yacht as a ship. The traditional maritime sectors do not refer to yachts as a ship. It's a boat, it's a yacht. So, what are we talking about? What type of infrastructural investment do we need in order to facilitate this shipbuilding? What do we really mean by this? The policies presently have not been fully developed. It seems to be broad, it seems to be all-encompassing, but where is the opportunity and which is the more viable option? We have some measure of shipbuilding in the form of pleasure crafts. If we were to go into the building of merchant vessels, of the size that you see there, well, that requires significant capital outlay, infrastructure, and skill sets. What sort of skill sets do we have to fuel such an industry? Well, I would offer to say that we have the competence now within Trinidad, because within UTT we have the first maritime campus offering internationally accredited degrees that answers to all of these needs. Within our Bachelor's of Nautical Science, which is accredited by the Institute of Marine Science and Engineering Science and Technology of the United Kingdom, that means that when you graduate with your BSc, you are automatically enrolled as a member of the IMRS, because our degree has been accredited for the maximum period of time, which is 5 years, by the IMRS. Similarly, graduates with our MSc, they become chartered marine technologists automatically upon graduation for the next 5 years. So we have the competency. Our international organizations that certify competent organizations is saying that you have the competency and you have the competency to grow competency. The question is, do we have the capacity? So therefore, with such a budget, we would see the opportunity to invest and enhance our capacity to fuel the growth required for the sector. So, as a facilitator, the Maritime Campus was created with initial primary emphasis on officer training. What is officer training? Not very many of us understand what is officer training. Not many of us can distinguish between who are those that are involved in management of the vessel, who are in control of the crewing of the vessel, who are the persons involved. So, what our facility does is train a cadre of professionals that enter as officer cadets and eventually junior officers or third officers in the Merchant Navy. Again, the certification from this has to come from the United Kingdom because we do not have the legal infrastructure in place to certify our own graduates. So we have had to seek, because the viability and the credibility of our institution is hinged on us being able to produce officers that are certified to go to sea. As I indicated, in that operation you see there, it's a highly skilled operation, and persons that are officers are the ones that control these vessels, these very large vessels with millions of dollars. At a very young age, a young professional, you're in charge of keeping watch on such a vessel, because the captain cannot be on watch for 24/7 in a journey that lasts 2 months. So what we have is we have to trust our young professionals, and therefore the certification required in entrusting these young professionals must be very robust. And that is why the international framework mandates that such officers must be certified in compliance with the applicable international standards. Such international standards have not found expression within our domestic laws. Hence the need for us, and the existing vulnerability for us right now is because we have to seek certification from the United Kingdom. Should they pull that certification, we will now have to ensure that our infrastructure is in place. The possibility for implementing that infrastructure exists. Some of the required legislation has been in draft form, but the impetus and the drive and the research to do it right is what is required. With respect to our shore-based courses, again, it's internationally certified. This caters for the persons who are in fact dealing with the shoreside aspect of management, because a maritime operation is not just about the seafarers and the driving of the ships. Someone has to take the cargo, someone has to be responsible for managing the cargo, someone has to be responsible for managing the ports and the harbors and the yards that receive and the warehouses that receive this cargo. This is what our Bachelor in Nautical Science and our Maritime Operations degree offers. In order to even take it further, this is where our research can be augmented to answer directly to the needs of Trinidad and Tobago, because these two degrees are actually innovations in this particular field. When the IMRS was reviewing our documentation, they said they have never seen a degree like this before, and I said it was developed mainly because It was an answer to the needs of our local and regional requirements. And they were thrilled because it embraced core courses as maritime law and maritime economics as core components of the shore-based aspect of operations, as opposed to the previous emphasis, which was on hard nautical science in the form of navigation and surveying. So, another maritime sector attracting interest within the budget, and it was a one-liner placed under what would appear to be building infrastructure. The minister mentioned an open registry. Following that statement, I got quite a few calls asking, how is this possible? What is an open registry anyway? An open registry allows for vessels and ship owners that are not nationals of your country to register in your country, and usually the reason for this is because you're offering favorable tax benefits and easy compliance with applicable international standards. So, do we have this? If we don't have the infrastructure to even certify our officers, our legal framework to enable such an open registry is very, very far behind. And even more so, to get it right. And what is the rationale for opening our registry in the first place? Because right now, if one were to choose any of the flags, and there are major shipping registries in the world, there is a variety of reasons that persons would be attracted to register the vessels away from their country of birth. And with respect to that, what are the opportunities we have to ensure that these vessels can in fact register in Trinidad? We don't have much to offer them at the moment because of the paucity of our local framework. There will be an attraction with respect to what is called a port state control detention. That is in fact the bane of any captain, because that means a delay to your vessel and possibly fines. Because we cannot implement the basic minimum international standards, vessels registering Trinidad and Tobago under an open registry that has not conformed to the minimum requirements of international standards will be subject to more international scrutiny than ship owners care or desire to have. So what are our gaps with respect to realizing our maritime dreams? So previous speakers have recommended that we identify and engage our key institutional players. The budget referred to Ministry of Trade and the Ministry of Tertiary Education as key players. While they are key players, the most important player is in fact the Ministry of Transport. So there is need to recognize this portfolio and this responsibility for accountability and for performance and implementation of the sector. So the opportunities for us, we need to optimize the maritime campus to answer to these needs. There is significant opportunity to further invest into maritime training to fuel the growth of this cluster, the ship repair and shipbuilding sector, but that has to be predicated on sound research. We have to be putting the emphasis on the right place and the right places. Right now, having a hunch and just doing it because it sounds good and it's unattractive is not really acceptable with respect to this maritime sector. We need to enhance capacity in marine training, ocean conservancy, and marine spatial planning. That will minimize the conflict users with respect to our marine environment as well, and further facilitate our maritime development. So with respect to charting our course, I would like to offer that yes, there is need for research. All of us here have been echoing the need for research. The research must identify and meet the needs of the maritime sector. The sector has to be strategically developed with respect to carving our own niche in this established world industry. We need to build on our preliminary research that exists for our existing plan of implementation. We need to optimize. We need to sufficiently equip existing institutions with the required staff to enhance performance. Because right now, even where we do have the capacity, performance is adversely impacted because of an incapacity. We need to apply our use of our existing assets to the strategic benefit of Trinidad and Tobago. We need to enforce. Monitor for adherence of stated strategies, because frequently we establish the institutions, we create the authorities, we empower them, but we do not monitor their performance. The performance must be monitored with respect to adherence to stated strategies. Accountability from public and private sector players is an imperative. Research to retain our competitive advantage